This A7C is absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite content creation cameras as far as like what I do here on YouTube. Yeah, it's fantastic at photography. It's better than the A7 III, but I still do love my A7S III that I'm using right now. But I do say that this is probably the best content creation camera you can get for the money and value and everything that this thing offers. And today I'm going over why I believe that. And is it still like relevant in 2022? Spoiler alert, yes. And here's 10 reasons why. What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Paul and I run a channel that inspires other creators that your future is whatever you make it. I do that through gear reviews, tutorials, and I do a lot of Sony content. At least I've been saying that, and it starts here today. This is where you're gonna start seeing a lot more Sony content on my channel. So today, this A7C here, it's my B camera and my wife's photography camera. I reuse this a lot on my channel, sometimes even more so than this A7S III. I'm gonna be doing a video on like how the colors compare to these two cameras, but the quality out of this thing is fantastic. Very much, I believe, is on par with the A7S III. Obviously, there's a little more goodies to this, but I'm gonna go into 10 reasons why here. And all right, I'll switch to the A7C now because it probably would make sense to show you this little setup here. Alright, and now here we are on the A7C, the exact same setup, K3M going into the A7C, same lens, the 24mm G Master, all the same settings. So this is kind of like gives you an idea of the difference between the image quality from the A7S III to this A7C. I still think it looks fantastic. I'm still getting all the eye autofocus stuff from it. Anyway, I'm jumping it too much into these points. So the first point we have here is the price tag of this camera. This camera retails for $17.99. And if you're lucky enough to have the EDU discounts, like I do if you're a teacher or a student, and you're going to school, you have an email address, you can register for that. I have a video about that you can check it out. But it's $15.18, which is a pretty great deal, a fantastic deal for a full frame camera, especially a Sony camera. And right now, the A7C is currently still the cheapest full frame camera. It's right below the A7 III. And personally, for me, I used to have the A7 III. I like this camera a lot better than the A7 III. Sure, you lose like the nice EVF that you have on the A7 III, but the colors and all the other benefits that I'm going to go through in this list, a lot of them aren't in the A7 III. So it just makes this camera just that much better, and personally why I think it's the best content creation camera for you to start out on if you're really wanting to jump into this and have a nice camera in the Sony system. The second reason is for it being a full frame camera. You can't find a full frame camera from Sony any cheaper than this one, and the image quality is fantastic. It's a 6K sensor downsampled to the 4K, and like the A7S III is a full 4K sensor. You can't use APS-C crop mode, and in this one you can use APS-C crop mode because you have that sensor with plenty of information. It's 24 megapixels, so when you go into APS-C crop mode, you're only going to cut that in half, and you'll be pretty much right on par with megapixels wise as where the A7S III is. So I mean, there is something to be said about that. It does look fantastic. I could crop it in a little bit and you wouldn't even really tell the difference as far as quality goes. That means you can go into APS-C crop mode and turn your lens into two different types of lenses. So say you have a prime like this 24mm, you hit the APS-C crop mode and boom, all of a sudden you get a 36mm equivalent. So that's fantastic. The number 3 reason is the size of this camera. So the reason why my wife was okay with getting this camera, and I was trying to get her to get my old A7 III, but she didn't like the size of the full frame camera. She loved the size of the APS-C, and this camera is pretty much the size of an APS-C camera. I got a little cage on it to make the grip a little bit better. You can check it out in all my accessories videos for the A7C, but even though it's only the EVF kind of chopped off, it still does make a difference, and I really do enjoy the camera for that size functionality. You just can't go wrong with this camera for content creation. It's the size, the quality. And the third reason for this thing is going to be autofocus. This thing has incredible autofocus. Right now, I can see the little box around my eye. It is tracking me everywhere I go. The eye autofocus in video is fantastic. They did not have that feature in the a7 III, which is one of the big reasons why I say this camera over the a7 III for video content creators. I get a little eyeball, box around my eye. It is fantastic. The autofocus is better on this camera, and the colors are even better on this camera. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself, but there's many other things that are great about this camera, but the autofocus is just phenomenal. Their cameras have amazing autofocus. I think they have the best autofocus, but I'm a little biased. The fifth reason here is audio, and this probably gets overlooked quite a bit. You can't really downgrade audio, because you could have the best looking camera in the world if your audio sounds like garbage. Nobody's gonna watch it. And this thing, like I showed you earlier, I'm now using like a high-end functionality audio system that I can attach to this camera because of that digital Hotshoe on it. That is like, I mean, it's amazing how I can still shoot the same level of content on this camera as my a7S III because of a lot of the same features that they kind of grandfather you into when you're in this Sony ecosystem. It's beautiful, but the audio preamps in this camera are fantastic. When you use a microphone like, say, the Rode NTG video mic, you can just plop it right in the side. I believe Sony is on the top up there with Panasonic as far as audio preamps go for their cameras. Other brands like Canon and Nikon have been kind of known to not have nearly as good of audio preamps inside of their cameras. I love that you can, crank the microphone preamps for this camera and they still sound pretty decent. Other brands, you want to like get the loudest audio out of the microphone first and then use the camera to increase the volume, because with bad preamps you get a lot of noise and stuff like that, and I feel like the Sony system has fantastic preamps. And like I said earlier, you get this nice Hotshoe. I'm using an XLR microphone, the NTG5 from Rode, and I'm plugging in the top, and it's going through the Hotshoe of this camera. It doesn't have as high quality bit rate as the a7S III allows, but this a7c, I mean, it still sounds great. Can you tell that terrible of a difference? and one thing I love this K3M because, I have it in auto mode, and Sony makes a number of other great mics. They just released the EB, or EM, EBM, or sorry, the EC, I don't know. Their microphones are naming is terrible. The B10, and they have another. Their older microphone was the B1M, and that microphone was like $350. The new version is smaller and has all the same technology advancements inside of it and is $250. So now I say, if you're on Sony, I used to say go get a Rode video mic NTG. I think now if you're on the Sony system and you got that digital Hotshoe like a lot of their newer cameras, including this a7c has, I'd just spend the $250 and get that new Sony mic, the B10. That thing is wow, amazing. And I've heard some people like Peter Lindgren only use the B1M on top of the microphone for, when they're doing talking heads like this. My microphone is like just out of the shot, like right above my head, and I'm booming it over me. People just put it right on top of this camera here, and they're further away, and the audio still sounds amazing. So once again, I probably spent a little bit too much time on this, but audio is totally king with these Sony cameras. Shooting modes. You have so much shooting modes in this camera, and man, it shoots 120 frames per second in HD, 60 frames per second in HD, and you obviously got 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second in 4K, but it looks just so good. Even though it's HD, it still looks pretty decent. I gotta say, I've mixed in clips for my friend Kyle Watt's videos with this a7c filming at the parks, and you would not tell unless you were like really like nitpicking. Ooh, it looks a little bit softer, but really, I mean, it looks fantastic. You're not gonna go wrong being able to get this camera, and you have all those high frame rate shooting options for when you want to shoot product B-roll and all those other things, or just B-roll in general of your channel. So 120, it's so good. And it has S&Q mode, which is really cool because it will pre-slow down the footage in the camera, so you don't have to like shoot in 120 and then pull it into your DAW and slow it down. Now I would say if you're going for super quality, I probably would just stick with shooting the regular 120 frames per second in the regular shooting modes, because S&Q, the bit rate is not nearly as high as the in camera, but And a lot of times, especially if you're just trying to pump out content, nobody's really gonna tell all that much, especially after the YouTube compression. So S&Q, I think it was perfect for YouTube content, and like I said, YouTube, you're trying to pump out content as soon as you possibly can, so that's what makes it amazing. The next thing that leads me to colors, and I've already kind of briefly touched on this a little bit earlier, but the colors are amazing. Could you tell a huge difference in the colors between the a7S III and this camera when I switched? That's to you, but I really think this is a standard picture profile, no adjustments, no profiles on here at all. I'm not shooting an S-Log3 and color grading it. This is just straight out of the camera, popping it. I don't got time for that, man. I don't got time to color grade when I'm doing these YouTube videos, and most people probably don't. It does have S-Log3, and it looks fantastic. It looks great. You get a little bit more dynamic range, and you can get it out of your camera. It look pretty amazing, and you probably could match this pretty well with the a7S III. I'm actually going to be doing a video on that in the future too, but so stay tuned. I really want to go dive deeper into kind of comparing the colors between these two cameras, because this is one thing that gets missed on this camera quite a lot, is colors. Well, I'll just get the a7 III. It's a little bit bigger and has a better EVF, but your colors are not going to look as good on the a7 III. They're not the same camera internally, and I can't stress that enough. The autofocus and the colors is better on this camera than the a7 III. Done deal, better. And I totally forgot to mention this earlier. It has a flip out screen. And right after color is lens selection. Man, the lens selection for Sony is just, they just blow everybody else away. They're letting third-party people make lenses. You got tons of options: Rokinon, Sigma, Tamron, and of course Sony has tons of amazing lenses. I feel like when you think they're done with lenses, they come out with a new one. It's like, wait, another lens? What, do we need more? I mean, my goodness, they got a ton of different 16 to 35s. They just keep updating their lenses to make them better and better and better, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Sony ecosystem. They continually looking out for their creators. They're taking feedback from people. They're trying to fix things that people are complaining about in their system. They're really trying to make it the best, and they listen to their people. So thank you, Sony. But yes, tons of lens options. Right now I'm using the 24 GM. I think one of the best lenses for this particular camera, especially for video. This is the 28-200 lens, and man, it is just awesome. And for the price, like, it's like 650 bucks. My wife loves this lens, and she uses it for photography, and she loves it because it's the range. She hates changing lenses. So if you hate changing lenses, this is a great option. Sony's got like a 24 to 105 that f4 that is like amazing. If you really don't like, just if you want to take one lens and go, but these are probably the two options I would say: the 28-200 and the Sony 25 to 105. If you just want like one lens to do it all. But you know, then you got for like, you know, YouTube vlogging. There's this lens, the Tamron 17 to 28. Super tiny, fits on this thing great. I think the 35mm 1.8 is probably the best all-around photography lens for this a7c. I mean, obviously, if you're not getting the GM, that's 1.4. But I think the 1.8 looks great. It's small and compact, and I take it on with this camera when I just want one photography lens for the day. Get some nice portraits, get some nice landscapes. It does kind of a nice all around. And then, like I said, you pump it into APS-C crop mode when you just need a little bit more out of that lens. Number 9 here is live streaming, and I can tell you that if you haven't seen my live stream, I do a live stream to Kyle Watts called Creator Camp. We're taking a little bit of break for the summertime to let our guests kind of, because we have a lot of guests that come in and they're really busy during the summertime, so we're taking like a summer break and starting back up fresh with season 2 when we get a nice amount of guests that are lined up. But I shoot on this camera for that stream. It looks fantastic. Believe it or not, it's going 720 out this camera when you're shooting out the USB-C. You know, you can do out the HDMI and get, you know, the 4K and all that stuff if you have a 4K capture card, but it's so easy just to put the USB-C in there, bring it in your computer, and just turn on the camera, punch into live stream mode, and then your computer recognizes it like it's a web camera that's plugged in. and it will send the audio and the video. So if you have a K3M on your camera and you want to plug in any kind of streaming XLR mic, you can do that. Or if you want to just plug it into the side of the 1/8 jack, plug your Rode into it, whatever, it'll work and send all the audio as well. I think if you're even gonna get this camera just to leave it on your desk setup at all times, so you're just like ready to go, this would be a perfect camera for that. Small, got the USB streaming, it charges through the USB-C too at the same time. Now I will say, if you're doing really long streams, I think if you had a full battery, you probably can get through the entire really long stream between it charging it, but it drains the battery faster than it charges it. So it is something to consider, but I think if you come ready with a full battery and plug in USB-C on the side, you'll be fine. I don't even charge the battery sometimes when I do my creator camp streaming. It's like an hour and a half, and I've made it through without the battery dying because it's continually charging. But it is something to think about. Now the last thing is the ecosystem. Man, Sony's ecosystem. So you have a great upgrade path with you when you're starting with this A7C. Like I said, a lot of people are loving the A7S3, a lot of people are loving that FX3. Your upgrade path is endless. It's whatever you want. You could even jump to the A1 and you can still use all your lenses, because Sony is like a one mount lens system. So their APS-C are all E-mount, their full frame are all E-mount. So no matter where you go in their little sphere, you can still use all your same lenses. I think it's fantastic. So if you wanted to get an A7C and you needed another B cam one day and you were like, I can't really afford one of their full frame cameras, but I can find one of their APS-C cameras used, you can still use all your full frame lenses on that APS-C camera and still, you know, have a good quality going on. So and in the same token, if you wanted to upgrade your camera this and still keep it as a B camera, well, your next camera, you can still use all the same stuff, even with the higher end stuff. So whether you go higher up or whether you need to have another budget option that's below this camera, you have tons of options. The ecosystem stays the same. This K3M works with any Sony camera with a digital Hotshoe. It's fantastic. Other than the ZV-1, I don't know why they didn't. That would have been really cool to have this thing work with the ZV-1, but it doesn't. But just a really cool ecosystem and path, and I think Sony listens to their customers and they are always improving. That's the #1 reason why I chose Sony way back when it was just the A7 III that just came out, because I feel like Sony is listening to their people. They're putting quality, like, features and desired features into their cameras. I mean, look, the A7 IV that came out has some better features than the A7S III, and they still haven't added them in yet. Come on, Sony. We know you can add some of those features in there if you really wanted to. It just goes to show that they're not afraid to, like, butcher some of their higher end cameras with lower end cameras that come out after them with better features. They're always improving, and if you're lucky, they'll add some of those features in with a firmware update. Come on, Sony, you can do it. But anyway, that just shows you that this A7C is fantastic. It is a beast. It's got so many options, perfect for content creation, perfect for thumbnails, perfect for shooting photography. It's an all-around great hybrid camera, and even with the A7 IV out, I still think that the megapixels, the file size is perfect. The only thing that this is limiting probably is 10-bit, but other than that, I think this is a great start, a great budget camera. And like I said, if you upgrade in the future, you can just leave this camera on your desk and have it in this wonderful upgrade ecosystem. I've talked probably way too long. This video is either gonna be way too long or I'm gonna have to cut out a lot of what I said. If you like this video, subscribe for more content just like this. Talking about A7C, Sony's, A7S III, lenses, you name it, filmmaking gear, you name it, tons of lights obviously. But subscribe, hit that bell notification so you won't miss anything, and you guys know that I will see you in the future. And this is way too long. 20 minutes? I mean, how am I gonna keep somebody on here that long? And I had some stuff on the A7S III before I shot this. Oh my goodness. What are you gonna do, Paul? What are you gonna do? I'm gonna have a lot of editing to do and cutting down. Freaking heck.